guys, happy Sunday. Before I start this week's video, I really want to ask if you can please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Has been really busy and my grandfather is pretty sick. He has gotten worse probably over the past 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So my mom flew into town and everyone's just been visiting him as much as we can. And yeah, and then work has been really crazy, and I had some kind of unfortunate, I guess, things happen with some doctors and got some kind of bad news, and I was pretty bummed about it. And so all of this all together, and then we are looking for a new car, and we're looking for a house, and we're looking for, like, we're just doing all of this stuff right now. And you know, it's just a lot. It's hectic. And still on top of that, still trying to get my cardio in, still trying to eat as clean as possible. And so unfortunately YouTube fell down on the bottom of my totem pole because I had other things that I needed to worry about that didn't necessarily revolve around uploading YouTube videos. But I wanted to jump back into the topic that I said I was going to go over last time, and that is anxiety. And a few years ago, I never understood what anxiety was. It confused me. I thought that it wasn't that big of a deal, and anxiety was just kind of like something that you dealt with. I never understood what people were talking about when they're like saying that they had panic attacks, because I'd never been through that myself. And so I think when you haven't gone through something and someone describes something to you, it's very easy to kind of diminish how they're feeling and just make it seem like it really wasn't that big of a deal, and they just kind of need to grow up and just deal with it. Deal with life. Life happens, whatever. But in the beginning of 2016, it was very rough. Roman and I had decided to move to Midland. We had all of our life was just ready to be changed, and we were dealing with a whole bunch of stuff as far as me getting sick when we tried to get pregnant, and how sick I got. And then a few months after, or maybe not even a few months, I would say maybe about a month after that, my grandmother passed away, and she and I were very close, and it was very hard. It was one of the hardest things that I think that I have ever had to go through in my life. It was rough. And so then when we moved to Midland, we really had thought about it, and it made sense because Roman was working out there at the time. He was in Midland way more than he was anywhere else in West Texas. So it made sense so that we would be able to like spend time together and stuff. But that also put us about 2 to 3 hours further away from San Antonio, which is further away from our doctors and further away from my family and friends. So we couldn't come to San Antonio as often as we could when we were living in San Angelo. San Angelo is about a 3-hour drive from San Antonio. So we were looking at about a 5.5-hour drive from Midland to San Antonio. And I mean, you don't really want to do that often. I had started a new med and got really sick off of it. It was making me throw up constantly. I think it was azathioprine. I don't know. I'm not really good at these medicine words. But so I started this medicine and I took it. I got really sick, was throwing up, and then I got a sinus infection. So the doctor put me on Z-Pak. I was drinking a ton of caffeine. And then on my way home from work one day, basically my heart rate shot up to about 183 beats per minute. And I remember everything just going black, and then I was on the phone with my mom, and we called 911, and I had to go to the hospital, and they kept me there until they got my heart rate down to 133, I think. And there really wasn't much they could do. And they were like, oh, I think it's a panic attack. And so I'm like, well, I've never had a panic attack before, so that didn't feel like a panic attack. It felt like something else. And so this is before they told, we did all the tests and found that, I get, the swelling and stuff in this area, my heart area or my chest area, so it just adds, I guess, it causes my heart to be faster. I get, as my cardiologist said, induced tachycardia. So now I'm on beta blockers for it, but before then we really didn't know. So about 2 days later, the situation happened again. By that time, I had already seen a cardiologist, and so the doctor actually was on call for that hospital that I was taken to the second time, and he came in and said, you know what, we're gonna admit you. This is what we need to do. We gotta admit you, we gotta figure out what's wrong, and we're gonna do it this way. And that's really nerve-wracking because you don't, how do I say this? If you're getting admitted, obviously it's not great, and a lot of times with lupus, when you go to the emergency room, they're like, okay, now, call your rheumatologist in the morning. We really can't do much for you. Whatever. Here's 1,000 pain meds. Take these and you'll be okay. So I really was worried at that point. They were pulling up some PVCs that were coming in to the EKG that they did, which PVCs are post-ventricular contractions. Everybody has them. They're normal. It's just abnormal when you start having them frequently. So they admitted me, and the next morning the doctor ordered an echocardiogram of my heart, and so they did that, and I just remember the lady who did it afterwards. I was like, how was it? Is it good? Making conversation with her, and I'm like, how was it? Is everything good? And she's like, well, the doctor will talk to you about it. And I was like, but the way that she said it, I was like, that's not a good thing. That means something. She saw something on there. And so the doctor came and talked to me and said, you know what, right now you have antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, or antiphospholipid antibodies. And so I guess they were super high in my blood, and he was like, we need to start you on aspirin now. This is what we need to do. And then he said, we also need to do a CT scan of your brain because we need to see if you had a stroke. And that's just something that you don't want to hear ever. I just remember kind of being in my bed and going one, I'm in Midland. I have no family here aside from my husband. And my mom is across town. Across country, I'm sorry. And how am I going to, make this work? If I had a stroke, I don't even know. All these things were going through my mind, and I'm just like, how is this even possible? I'm so young. So basically what he found that I have just some abnormalities in my heart, some thinning areas. It's normal. Well, it's not normal at all, but it's normal for you not to have problems with it, basically, until you're older, and then you do. But a lot of people have, abnormalities in their heart. They just don't really know anything about them because they're not huge problems. So these thinning areas, or the bowing areas of my heart, they're technically called an aneurysm, but they're not the kind of aneurysm that you're thinking. So I have them in my heart, and we were trying to, so they take me to do my CT scan because they're trying to see if I had a stroke or not. came back negative. I didn't have a stroke. And so they started me on metoprolol to bring down my heart rate. And then they started me on the aspirin to kind of regulate my blood so that way they could try to thin it out and work on those anti-phospholipids. So after all of that, I went through a really weird 2 days or 3 days after I got out of the hospital. And like, I will never forget walking through, like, right after we got to the hospital. I said, I told Roman, I said, let's go to Academy really quick, and I want to buy a polar heart rate monitor because I want to be able to see what my heart rate is at. And I just started nitpicking everything, like going into stores, going into like, I was hyperventilating, like, I was shaking, my heart rate was going so fast, and I was like so convinced that at any second I was going to die. I can't even explain to you how I felt. I think a lot of it was the fact that my cardiologist wasn't super descriptive at the time on what was wrong, and he didn't really explain it well. And it was just like, we think you had a stroke, you didn't have a stroke, but let's stop a stroke. So all I kept thinking is like, I'm going to die. Like, if this happened a few days ago, this is going to keep happening, and it's going to happen again and again and again and again. It's not going to stop. So I just started having like really bad panic attacks where I would like be laying down at night, and I would lay in bed, and I mean, my heart rate was just through the roof. It was crazy. And I think it was probably like 150 beats per minute. I'm laying down, trying to go to sleep, and I can't sleep. I can't, because I think I'm gonna die. I'm laying in bed, and I'm crying, and I'm telling my husband, like, hey, if I don't wake up tomorrow, like, I love you. And like, I had never really been that scared before with lupus. I had like family that had passed away from lupus, and so I knew what it was capable of. I know what it's capable of, but without the right information, or without the correct detailed information of what was wrong with me, my mind went nuts. And when I say nuts, I can't even explain to you how bad it was. It was like, I thank God for Trigger, that we had Trigger at the time, because like Roman was working so much, and Trigger was my reason to like get up. Trigger was my reason to go outside. He was my reason to like to pull myself together. And I don't think that if it was for him, I would have been able to like put my life back on track, because I was like laying in bed all day long because I just couldn't. I was so scared. I was so scared that I was gonna die. And I would have panic attacks, like, for no reason. I would just start freaking out. And my heart rate was super high. Not because it was, like, something, was going on. It was just because I was thinking about it. My mind was dwelling so much on the what if that, like, I couldn't, I literally couldn't, like, think about anything else except for the fact that, like, I may die. And that was it. That was it. I was saying shit to people that people were like, who are you? Like, why would you tell me that? I'm like texting my girlfriend and I'm like, if anything happens to me, please make sure that my husband's okay. Which is so hard to even say it, like 20, at the time I was like 26. It's like so hard to be like, oh, if something happens to me and I die, like, please make sure my husband's okay. Something you shouldn't even be thinking of. But there I was having like meltdowns constantly, and I literally cannot give Roman enough credit because he was so patient and so understanding and just there like 150%, and not many people will do that. And I think that for that, like, I could never say thank you enough to him, because that was huge. And so finally, about 3 weeks later, we made the decision to move back to San Antonio. Roman ended up getting a job opportunity in South Texas, so we moved back to San Antonio. And I wish that I could say that I have a perfect plan for how to deal with this stuff. But the truth is that I don't. I'm very fortunate because a lot of it was just medical anxiety. I was scared of my health. So finding good doctors helped me a lot, because they helped me understand exactly what was going on and if I should even be scared at all. And if there was like what real precautions looked like and what real warning signs looked like and realistically what could happen, but what probably won't happen. And it was a lot of being honest with them too, and being like, if it's something that like I really don't have to worry about, don't tell me, because I feel at this point like I'm just gonna nitpick at it and it's gonna be the only thing that I think about all the time. Like, just don't even bring it up. Because I had gotten like bronchitis a couple of times, and they kept checking me for blood clots because the anti-phospholipids in my blood, and I mean, like, that over and over again. And my grandmother had just passed away from a pulmonary embolism, so like, I mean, 2016 was rough because anytime that I had a respiratory infection or my asthma was bad and I couldn't breathe, I mean, they were constantly doing checks to make sure that I didn't have a pulmonary embolism. I twisted my ankle and they did a scan to make sure I didn't have a blood clot. And I mean, it's great that they were they were taking their precautions, but at the same time, it caused so much more stress than it had to. And so I found this lady online, and her name is Dr. Elaine, and she has a site, and it's called, I forgot what it's called, but the course is Mind. I'm gonna find the link and I'll put it below, but it's basically like, Moodsmith. So it's Moodsmith, and she basically goes through these whole entire details of what anxiety is and what you need to do to like retrain your brain, basically. And I found that to be super helpful because I'm the type of person that has to know, like, I want to know, like, why am I having anxiety? What does it mean? How do I get rid of it? Like, step by step of like the root of why, And that helped so much because it showed me that basically my thoughts were changing everything. They were creating their own map and rewriting the way that I thought and the way that I lived before, because fear just instantly erases everything else and just kind of rewires your whole brain to be like, panic all the time. Like, panic all the time. I was like so panicky that I was like Googling like methods. I was like sniffing lavender. I was like putting lavender on my pillow. I mean, it was crazy. But I just also started making little goals for myself. I know it sounds so stupid, and I say this all the time. I'm always like, set little goals for yourself. But no, seriously, if it was not for setting goals and being like, today, I'm gonna go to the big HEB today. I'm going to go running today. I am going to go on a walk today. I'm going to take the dog for a walk. I'm going to go on a hike. I'm going to hang out with friends today. I'm going to drive across town, because at this point, I was even worried to drive because I was scared that like it was going to happen again while I was driving. And I mean, it was so bad. I just had to set these little goals for myself to be like, hey, you can do this. This is doable. It's all going to be okay. Nothing. And I just kept telling myself, okay, the last time that this happened, afterwards, like the last time we went to the grocery store, you felt a little funny, that everything was okay. Or anytime I get pain, I had to be like, okay, I've gotten this pain before. The last time I got it, I was okay. I, was driving and my heart rate went up a little bit, but I was okay. So it was just a lot of telling myself like, hey, this has happened before, it was okay. It's very okay. Like, I just have to keep telling myself that over and over again. And they haven't really come back. I've maybe had about 2 or 3 instances where it's happened in the past year and a half, but it's been mainly around my period, because I find that when my hormones are bad, I get a lot more anxious, and I guess now we know that's because of the hyperthyroidism, and that whole thing is causing that. But I mean, and now it's just kind of like, look, it was mind opening. It humbled me a lot, because I didn't understand what other people were going through, and I thought that I had the answers for everything, and God was like, no, you don't. You don't have the answers for everything. And you may think you know this, but you really don't. And I was very humbled by that, because now I know that like it's just something that I do not wish on anybody. I do not wish that anybody else goes through this, because it's super hard and it's super rough. Panic attacks are not fun, and they're scary, and they're hard. And if you are dealing with these things and you're not dealing with them just because they're medical, because you're dealing with them because that's just how you are and something that you've had to deal with, like, I know that this isn't a consolation for you, but like, I just hope that you can get past this, and I know you can. And I want you to know that I pray for everybody who has anxiety every night, because I feel like maybe it'll help. And I'm a firm believer in Christ, so I feel like if my prayer at least helps 1 or 2 people who are going through this, it makes a difference. And I hope that your days get better. I hope that you have calmness over your soul and in your head and in your spirit, that you just feel so peaceful and at ease, and that you definitely start to find a peace within yourself. It's taken me about a year to get to this place, and I'm thankful for that journey because now I'm a new person and I see things a lot differently than I probably would have had I never experienced this. But it made me also feel like that I'm human and I'm not as tough as I think I am. I can break down just like anyone else. It was really something that was hard for me to realize. I think that was probably the hardest part of all of it, realizing that I can't and don't have to be that strong all the time. But it was a blessing. Now I don't really experience, like I said, I don't really deal with it now, but I still carry my Xanax with me just in case, because I'm like, I'm just scared. Sometimes I'll find that I like need to pull over when I'm driving just because I get a little bit like anxious, where like all like the pins and needles like rush up to your head and you're like, ugh. But yeah, I know a lot of people deal with anxiety, and I just thought maybe hearing my journey of why, or at least like for medical induced anxiety, because I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, there's just, anxious people, and they don't really see that there's like anxiousness because you're chronically ill and you're just scared, like you're scared for your future. And it's normal to be scared for your future when you have a chronic illness. We're battling thoughts and decisions that people who, are our age don't really have to think about. They don't really have to sit there and be like, oh, well, should I or shouldn't I start this chemotherapy because I don't know what it's going to do? Or should I freeze my eggs? Or should I, get off steroids? Or like, they're not making these big decisions. So it's a lot to deal with. And I just wanted everybody to know that it's okay. It's okay not to be strong all the time. And I had to learn that the hard way. And even though people told me I didn't have to, I didn't listen and still tried to be a hard ass all the time. But I just want you to know that you don't have to be strong all the time. And I hope this video helped someone. And if you have any tips on how to deal with anxiety better, please, by all means, leave them below. Sorry this tone of I'm sorry that this tone of the video is like kind of blah. I don't want it to be that way. I want it to be like upbeat, but facts, man. I just wanted to give you all the facts. So I'm sorry if I blurted out a lot of information in the last 30 minutes, but I don't even know if anybody watches this long. If you watched this long, comment below. Alright guys, have a good Sunday. Bye.